And may I say, darling, you look super handsome today.
Well, I'm glad I'm recovered. Thank you. Well, hello, everybody, and welcome back to Stream of Consciousness, where we talk about people's journeys, about how they're helping the world and how they're expanding the stream of consciousness out there and how we're all connected. And today we have a very special guest. We have Raina coming in. Raina, how are you?
I am doing wonderful. How are you, Brandon?
I love your high quality tech stuff over there. I've got to tell you, I have a little mic envy. I'm sitting here with a stock Shure mic, and I'm like, I'm king of the world. And meanwhile, you come in, you grip the microphone in, and I'm like, oh, I guess she is ready. Here I am. I'm sending you pointers before here, turn off all electronics and whatever. And you're like rolling your eyes. You're like, what kind of Punch and Judy guy is this? By the way, I'm in stream of consciousness too.
Hey, come on to be a guest, right?
I know, right? So you and I met through our travels. It was down there in Florida at the Spirit Fest. I forget which one. Doesn't matter. They're all great. And a couple of things that really stuck out with me is really kind of how you're super compelled to bring this messaging of this personal growth into consciousness. Let's go back in time a little bit for Raina. When did you know that this is the work you were meant to do?
Probably about 2 years old. I was about 2 years old, and I had one of my first guides, Lori, come visit me, and she started coaching me, telling me why she was there. And I never felt threatened by her, but I was just wondering who this lady was. It wasn't until about 5 years old when 3 other guides came in and they started to prepare me, and they started saying, well, this is who you are. This is what you're here to do. This is your life mission and purpose. And your mission and purpose is to teach people. And we're going to teach you and help you remember all the things that you don't remember. And I kind of thought, what are you talking about? And I'm a kid, I'm 5 years old, I want to go out and play. And so throughout my life, they started coaching me and doing and teaching me all these different concepts. And I grew up in typical society. My parents were Catholic, went to Catholic school. I was raised in business and everything. So it was like money. And they were, and there was this pull though. One of the most interesting things is there was always this fire, to teach and to learn. And it still burns bright today. I have this, Michael Jordan, right? Have you ever heard the story of him and how he's just so kind of obsessed with his technique and learning. And that's why he's the best.
So it's kind of like that kind of maturity component where it's you get thrusted into something. You're not even sure what you're being thrusted into. And then all of a sudden you are you become the expert because you worked at it so hard. Yeah, I totally know what you're talking about here.
So I became consumed by it. But there was a period in high school where I rejected it. And for much of my young life, because it was just, I didn't understand, your body goes through changes, you go through, you want different things. And I felt trapped for a while this. Yeah. I had choice. This is who I was supposed to be. And I didn't have the choice of freedom. It wasn't until everything came crashing down, probably about 10, 15 years ago. And I just said, you know what? I have to accept this. This is who I am. This is because every time I try to do something different, it always caused chaos. And it always brought me right back to, okay, we need to teach, we need to grow in consciousness, we need to become aware, we need to evolve into this. And it was just this one situation where I just said, it's enough, I'm done. And I rejected everything. I said, I quit. And I just felt empty inside. There was just this energy just went, and I didn't know who I was, Brandon. It was
Got it. Yeah, I totally get it. So what was the tower moment? What was the one where you got totally pushed right back into the tank? Like you're saying, you're I quit, I'm going home. And by the way, everybody on a spiritual journey, you do have that component. Yeah. You do have that moment. And usually it comes out as the imposter syndrome where you're really, what? I didn't sign up for this shit. What am I doing here? And then you have to go through that and you just pull it apart. And for years, I've taught a class called Conscious Living, which is how you begin to assimilate some of this stuff. And almost everybody talks about that tower moment. What was yours?
My tower moment was when one of my friends committed suicide.
There it is.
and it was like it was actually she was going through very much trouble with her relationship and everything, and she was kind of suicidal anyways, having a lot of emotional problems. And it was like I really didn't want to help her, and I should have been there, and I should have been,
Yeah.
and I just kind of like pushed advice on her because I was just like, you know what, I just didn't. And it all came crumbling down, and she committed suicide. And I said,
Oh,
wow, the consequences of our actions, the consequences of what we say and not being there for people. And I just remember hearing Lori said self-reliance,
okay.
and it just rained, and even goosebumps right now are going up my head, because in that moment I realized who I was, that I was a spirit guide and soul sage, and that I had to do this regardless of what I wanted. I had to surrender my own ego and fulfill what I was here to do.
Let's talk about ego for a second. Like, how do you do that in consciousness? It's where it's at, isn't it?
It
Because I mean, you brought up the business thing, and I love this conversation right now. Like you're like, really, you want me on your podcast? And like 40 minutes in, we're like, holy shit, yeah, this is it. Like we're all the tribe, right? So, I mean, the ego thing, it's funny. I was always getting like critiqued for being like, oh, he's pompous, he's arrogant. No, I was confident. And I think that there's a difference. And there were times where ego was in it, when I'm like, how many people are at my show? Like that sort of thing. But I had to go through that to be like, to realize like I could really knock it out of the park with 25 people and
Yeah,
not 125 people. I wasn't going to get to everybody anyways. Right.
correct.
So those were the moments where I started to kind of say, and I think you have to go through an ego death. Would you say that was like also an ego death moment for you?
Well, I always look at it like this. There's two parts of the ego. There's a healthy side and a chaotic side. And I just break
Yeah.
it down really simple without getting all psychology. And we have to have a healthy side of our ego. We have to be able to look at ourselves and say, you know what, I'm good at this. I can do this. I
Yeah.
believe in myself to be able to handle this. And I have the knowledge to do this. That
Right.
perpetuates us to grow. That perpetuates us to expand and evolve. The other side is, well, it's all about me. Well, you know what, I'm the greatest. This is all about me. It's not about you. And it's all about showmanship. And that side is the side that we need to eventually fight with and resolve and say, you know what, look, I get it. I get you want to, because there's always something lacking when we're fighting with that side. When we're
Mhm.
confident, like, if someone doesn't like what I say, hey, I understand. We're all not at the
Yeah.
same positions as we are. And I understand that. When I teach, it's not about me. It's about those who want to learn.
Yeah.
If I pack this all up tomorrow, I would still be happy in my life. And that's how you understand, because the awareness of the ego is saying, okay, well, when I'm teaching, when I'm doing these things, when I'm living, when I'm hanging out with my friends or whatever it is, how am I responding to every situation and every experience? If I'm doing it to please me and my emotions and my insecurities, well, then that's that ego trap.
Yeah. And I think that there's a component of this that allows you to um it's the fight or flight component that I always talk about, where if somebody, sometimes we need ego to get ourselves out of something.
Yes.
And when you haven't, I think this is the biggest thing for teachers. And I'm speaking to a lot of teachers, because I've found that my audience is primarily people that are ready for the journey, or they've been part of a journey and they're like, I need a little reset. I need a colleague. I need somebody that speaks to this. So that's that reason number 47 why you're on this today, right? Is because you've kind of get yourself to a certain point, and then you start to kind of dissolve it. I've actually learned that showmanship part of it has its place, which is a
Yes.
more powerful thing than elimination. Because what I found is that, like, a little piece of you dies when you're like, oh yeah, I can't do that anymore. I mean, the fact that I never played outfield for the Yankees is still annoying me. I'm like, oh, I missed my shot at this part of life, and is baseball going to be here next time I'm around, and all that other good stuff. So that's one form of ego death. The other form of ego death is in like, I can't do it that way. It was fun. I offended enough people, or I struck a chord with certain people. But then there's the dynamic of like a maturity code that I think kind of comes in, where astrology plays a part, life changes play a part. When you're working with people, how much do you see like kind of come out of that And maybe if I ask the question this way, is there a difference when you're working with somebody that you would consider mature, like maybe in their 40s or 50s, as opposed to somebody in their 20s and 30s? How does your approach, or what are the things that you really notice their challenges tend to be?
So one of the things that I've always had the ability to do is see people for exactly who they are. So no
That's
matter
awesome.
what, no matter how you try to hide, no matter how much you try to pretend who you are or want to be, fake it till you make it, I can see that. It was for the longest
Really
time.
great.
No, well, you think so. And I was just about to say it sounds great, but it's also sometimes I felt like it was a curse, even though I don't believe in that. But
Yes.
because you don't because every time someone approaches you, I just see a laundry list of things that they're here for and what they got to work on. And so the ego, we're all under some type of ego because that's the way our brain works. Our brain is learned to develop that way because that's how we understand our perceptions with everything. There's very few. I always tell people, and it's a shocking number, like 99% of people are not mature. And I know that's gonna I
I'm
know
sorry,
that's
what? And I'm their leader, damn it.
sometimes I fall into that, you know.
What is maturity then? If it's only 1%, like
Well,
we gotta, this is an important piece to me.
that too. So maturity is all different things, and it's subjective in so many ways because we think about maturity. Well, what are we matured? Are you talking about how we act, what we understand, how we react to something? So there's emotional maturity, there's mental maturity, there's soul maturity. There's conscious maturity. So there's all these different levels of maturity. So to say, well, you're mature. Well, you could act mature. You could go to work every day. You could pay your bills. You could do all these things. You could never swear. Whatever society thinks is mature, whatever the
All right,
label.
3 out of 4 of those things, not even close. All right,
Yeah.
but keep going. Right.
So, but to me, maturity is, are you understanding who you are on the emotion, mental, and soul level? Are you trying to look at yourself and become aware of your actions and your reactions and how you treat people and how, if you're trying to learn new stuff, because that's what we're here for. We're here to learn new ideas. And so the ego stops us from learning. It says, I don't want to learn this. I know everything. You can't tell me
Oh,
anything.
isn't that the best?
I know,
Don't you
right?
freaking love that?
And we did an event just recently, and someone came at me over and over and was just like, I was wrong on everything, this person was right on everything, and was just trying to create a disharmony. So in a sense, I would look at that as a conscious immaturity, because they're not understanding anything can be new information and of evolution.
And it's funny, I always find, when people try and turn it on you when you're doing work with them, that has kind of been, I mean, we're flawed individuals. I think it's a very interesting statistic of 99% of maturity. Like, well, okay, well, maybe that's who we are as a civilization, and consciousness is the only way to kind of get through it. Like, because I can do all of those things in every one of those compartments. I can pay my bills, I can quit swearing, I can, eat a diet that's in line with my philosophical beliefs, and, all those things, right? And I can get there. I can kick ass and take names. And then on the flip side of that, it's like, okay, well, what's missing? Well, is there a connectivity to it? Is it a part where I have to let go of success being what's in my bank account and success being in my stature or my other stabilities? It's funny. I had a student once who I just pointed out something, like, the thing that they were doing wrong as a medium was they were failing to recognize social construct. Like, as in, like, it's great that you have that ability, but you don't go reading people in a butcher store, in a butcher, because it's just like, it's like that works for TV, Godspeed Teresa, but it's like, what doesn't work is, so and so in upstate New York going, oh, I'm getting your grandmother, and you're like, she doesn't care.
Yes.
Like, they're not open for the message. So it's like that social context. And when I pointed it out to her, and she's just like, she's telling all these great stories about how she's at a gas station and saving people, and I'm just like, stop, just stop.
Yeah,
It's the hero complex, really. I
exactly.
became the enemy. I became the enemy. And I think that as teachers, we have to be really kind of like on our, where we're kind of being held at a higher perspective, at a higher standard, do you have challenges with that? Like when a student comes in and then they're like, because we're on a personal journey too. Do you have
Yeah.
challenges like that with students where they challenge you and you're like, oh, well, you know why you don't feel good today? It's because you did this. And you're like, what the fuck? Like, really? I'll be the instructor today.
Well, I absolutely. One of the things is that when I teach and there are students like that or people there, one of my jobs is to point out truth. That's part of the program that I work with is
Yeah.
because I am evolution means coming to the I am part of who you are, is understanding that everything we are is I am. And the only way we get to that is by recognizing like who we are and what we're doing and moving away from all these belief systems that are planted here, because life is all meant. It's like I always use the thing. Remember the Rubik's Cube in the 80s? We're showing our age here a little bit. But
Yeah, a little bit, little bit. We've been through a couple of Jupiter returns, if you know what I'm saying.
Right, just a couple. And so, like, you look at the Rubik's Cube, and the more you turn it, the more you twist it, it becomes a mess, right? And then you look at it, it's all jumbled, and you're like, I can't do this. But
Yeah.
if you actually understand the pattern of everything, then you can turn it back and put it back to pieces. That's what we are doing here. And the more you just flip it around, and I always give this analogy, the more you just flip it around and twist it and don't even try to understand, that's when you're here when you're buying into the belief systems, you're buying into the media, you're buying into all this stuff, you're just acting in the ego, and you're just acting in anger and selfishness and all these things. And then when you start to look at yourself and say, okay, pause for a minute, let's look at what truly is going on here. If I just keep spinning it around, nothing changes. But if I try to guess the pattern, see, and that's what truth does to us. So yes, when I have students and everything, I don't snowball them. I used to do that when I was younger. I'd be like, bam, and then like drop
I know
the rock.
exactly what you mean. And by the way, that snowball technique, there's actually a term for it. And I saw he's an interviewer on MSNBC, Amadi. He just came out with a book on this, and he basically talks about how the way that, like, and I know that our conversation isn't about religion per se, but evangelicals would tend to like just give you such a tsunami of information, and 95% of it had no basis of reality except for I can just quote a ton of stuff. And you were faced with like, well, I guess if there's that much information, then I have to believe it, type of thing. And we've seen this in our mainstream news now, where it's just like we just get this diatribe of stuff, and you're just like, okay, but we know it's false, so we walk away from it, especially when you're conscious. But I also think too that when you're I love that philosophy, and I didn't learn that until later. Exactly what you just said. I'm going to bring it back to the point. Yeah, you're right. I had a Twinkie today, but that's not where you're cut. That's not why you're reading people while you're getting pork chops. Like, there's a difference here, right? And it is that cyclical thing. I mean, I see cycles in astrology all the time, but you couldn't necessarily develop patternistic realization, which is basically how you teach, without experience. I mean, how do your classes flow? And I'm actually going to bring up, as you're talking about this, I'm going to bring up the, your latest flyer for your latest class right now for, the I Am Evolution, the foundations class that you've got going on, where you kind of have it quadranted. By the way, it looks like a Rubik's Cube, from judgment, awareness, emotions, and the principles of emotion. Talk a little bit about that. How did that come to be, and what do you think people get out of it?
Well, the biggest thing that we have to understand is we have to have discipline. We have to have some type of structure, because we live in non-structure. The only thing that we're structured in is getting up and going to work and going to make money. We have been taught certain ideals that you have to be married, you have to have kids, you have to have a job, and then you get sick and die. And that's just not the type of, like, the understanding that our soul craves. That's why so many of us hunger. So in order for us to understand who we are, everything has to have a foundation. You've heard the old saying, you can't build, a new house in an old rickety foundation. So everything has to be destroyed. And it has to be up to the person to say, you know what? I have to level everything. I have to start from scratch, and I have to see what's out there, not what people are saying, not what the massive majority, like you were saying, like if it's out there and we hear it 1,000 times, our brain says, Oh, it must be
Yeah,
true.
sure.
Everyone says it, so the brain accepts it. That's what our brain does. Even as like, why do we believe that this color is black? Because we've been told this color is black,
Mhm.
right? So the
Right.
foundations do that. The first part of it says, well, in order for me to see myself and move on through all these things, I have to recognize one thing. And we always start with judgment because as beings, we are very judgmental. And until
Sure.
you recognize that you're a judgmental person, because I was even in this lifetime.
Well, think about it. Sesame Street taught us how to, which one of
Yes,
these is not like the other,
yes.
right?
I
It,
use
it
them all
teaches
the
you
time.
differentiation through comparison and going, that one doesn't belong, right? Keep
Yeah,
going. Keep going. I
I
love
use
it.
that all the time. That's funny that you said that because
Ah, hold on a second. I think you get a book. There's a book. Anyways, it's sitting right back here. Funny you should say that, by the way. All of my guests get a copy of my book. That's just how it goes.
That's
But we have our first funny you should say that moment. Anyways, so but with that though, I do have a question though. This you said something curious that I think is worth follow up here because you're talking about leveling it down and then building it back up. How do you going to determine what you keep to begin with? Because leveling it could be also be dangerous. How do you find the pieces to say, oh, this is a good block, I need this one? What's the process through this course?
the way I work is I level everything because I don't know. Because if I was raised to believe certain stuff and to know certain things, I don't know what's true because the one thing that I understand is a lot of what people understand and even what I understood was made up. Like we are such a young species. Like if you understand the age of the universe and the age of the earth and everything and how long humanity's been around,
Yeah.
to say we get it, that's arrogance in its own form. So the way I did is just level everything and figure out who you are in that sense. So when we level all of our ideas and say, okay, I'm going to let go of everything and I'm going to see what starts attracting to me, to what I start to understand,
Yeah.
what starts pointing out to me. And then I'm going to invest. I'm not just going to accept it. I'm going to investigate it and see how this works with my life. Because the problem is we just accept something. We hear something on Facebook or YouTube or whatever, and we just say, oh, I like it. I just accept it without any knowledge. But in order for us to become wise, we have to take that knowledge and use it by gaining experience, and then we understand it, and that in tune is wisdom. And when we have the wisdom, we can start building the foundation of where we are, because everybody in the world has a specific set of consciousness.
Oh,
And
talk
and
about that. I like that. So what's the specific of consciousness? Like, what's the
so
specific set of it?
so I always put it in this term.
Mhm.
If you have people from the age of 2 years old to the age of 85, they
Mhm.
have different levels of understanding based on their experience, right? A 6-year-old is young and imaginative, running wild, doesn't care about teenagers, think they're and the list goes on and on. The older you get, the more experience you have and the more understanding. And so when we're old, we have all this wisdom and we have all this understanding of the way things are going because we've lived certain things. And that's the way consciousness works. Younger souls fight more, they murder, they do different things because they haven't learned to grow in love. And as we're evolving, we start to understand, well, it's not, there's no such thing as right or wrong, but I need to come to a place of love because that's what we're here for, is to understand that we're conscious and that the whole thing is understanding self. And so as we evolve through our consciousness, we start to understand certain things. And that's where that maturity comes in. So the more evolved the soul is, the more they start to help people, the more they start to be kind to under other people, the more they start to understand that money and materialism isn't these things. And the only thing that they start to crave is self, and the self of acknowledgement. And that means like you and I are the same person. So I want to love you, Brandon, as much as I love me, because you and I are the same.
So in the collective consciousness, what you're really talking about is the vibration of soul. And what you're doing is you're trying to reduce any of the stuff that we get in our own way with. It's
Yes.
the Big Mac we crave. It's the quasi addictions that we have, and we all have quasi ones. Like in the Western Hemisphere society, you have something, whether it's binge watching TV, whether it's a pint of ice cream. It might be quote unquote healthy. You might not be necessarily going down a dark alley to get what you need, but you're still kind of introducing whatever thing is going to slow you down, and we justify it. We
Yeah.
just justify it. We justify, well, at least I'm not doing that. You know,
Yeah.
that's one justification. The other justification is, well, I've come a long way. And as much as there is like a self-love part of this, you know, I think what you're really calling for is like, when you elevate your own self-consciousness, you get to a certain point where my self-consciousness allows for the space for your self-consciousness, and it's no longer in competition, correct?
Yeah. Yes, because that is separation. And where you call it justification, I call it judgment. Because
Okay.
if I say, well, at least I'm not doing that, I'm judging, right? I'm saying
that.
if I'm more evolved, then I'm judging the other person who's not evolved. And when you become conscious, those concepts fall away because you realize that every person on this planet is just a different perspective of who you are,
Love it.
learning something. And how can you judge that? So me and you are having two separate lives, but we're the same idea, having just different perspectives that we can be one unit. And that's
And
that understanding.
I think that's super important as a teacher too, because I mean, that's our role. And again, this is where there's like a, you know, I don't mean to be Orwellian about it, but there, you know, or Animal Farm about it, but there is a separate but equal conversation here, where it's like my role is as a teacher, your role is as a teacher, right? My role in our relationship was for me to set this up and you to show up, and you're like, I freaking love just showing up. Come on, give me that all day long, because you needed that experience to be, you know, passionate about this, to change things up or see something different or see how somebody else works or whatever the deal is. And what we don't recognize is that when we have those reflections as a teacher, you know, I was talking about the challenges of students. Some of my greatest learning moments were through students.
Yes.
You know, when they push back or they don't. And again, there's the, I'm going to push back because I don't want to do the work, or I'm going to push back because I think you know, I admire where you're at, but I think there's more. And I think you have something more because this is what I'm bringing to it. That's when my mind just goes like through the roof. And I'm like super excited because now not only do I have an engaged person, but I
Yeah.
also have somebody that's elevating, which is the purpose of it. And if my sacrifice into that is to get challenged, we're all on board. Do you find that that's like your fuel to get challenged and do the elevation? Or do you feel like it has to be like in the moment and you're like, okay, I know I've done this.
Well,
I'm meeting them where they're at, so I'm going to get them to the next level, whatever that is.
that's the whole point to it. And you hit it on the head, is you have to meet everybody where they're at. So I could walk around and say, well, you know, I'm this and have all these titles and everything like that. But I always say I'm a student of the conscious arts. And that's what I always say, because in every situation, we're learning something, every experience, every interaction, everything. And a matter of fact is, and Caleb can attest for this because he lives with me, is I go through so much constantly. There's always challenges and it's one after another. And I challenge myself to be put in those situations. And when somebody else comes, a student or someone I meet on the street, I put myself in their situation to learn, because that's the way we learn, is to say, okay, well, I need to meet you. And Caleb's like, sometimes we'll be doing something and he's like, well, why didn't you fight back? Or why did you just kind of, you know, just okay.
Sure.
And just, and I was like, well, because I have to come and meet them where we're at. If I'm trying to battle them, then we both lose, because we're now our egos involved. And so the best way we learn is to understand the person who's speaking to us, whether it's coming at us in a harsh way or not.
Is there ego in just cutting bait and not even having the conversation? Is there ego in ghosting somebody, let's say? It seems to. Okay, what is then where there is an ego in that, because you're not willing to face where you could grow, and your ego might be hurt and avoiding the actual topic. Just something that comes up often, and I get asked that because people talk about their relationships. It's like, oh, they just stopped talking to me.
Yeah.
And it's
you know,
like, where does that sit?
But you know, Brand, and that's an awesome question, because it's like, I ghost people from time to time, but I always give them my time. So the way I have boundaries, and boundaries are very helpful for people. So I will always give someone my time.
Listen, you're talking to a Pisces here. It's a lifelong mission. I'm just telling you. I'm just telling you. I mean, I'm welcoming Saturn into my house. Let's just put it that way. You see what I'm saying?
Okay, I'm ruled by Saturn. But
yeah, that's right. You're Cappy, because we're going to talk about that here in just a minute. But go ahead.
But boundaries are important because I love myself and I respect myself and I respect my time and energy. But I also know the threshold between someone who's just looking to fight and create chaos and someone who's not open enough to learn. So I will hear
Yeah.
them out. I will offer something if they choose me to do that, because I never offer advice and I don't just go out and say, oh, well, you need to do this. I will listen to them. And if they want something and they'll ask me a question, otherwise, but if I see that it's rejected or a couple things are
Yeah.
rejected, or they're just causing, then I put that boundary on up and I'm saying, you know what, maybe there's somebody else that you need to talk to, blah, blah. And I kind of take a step back, and that's where I really don't put my energy.
You mean you don't keep them around as a student for years on end so that then
No,
they self-destruct?
nope, no,
That
no,
is
no.
such the trend in this work. You know that, right?
Yes, yes, no.
Such the trend.
I
Oh,
have I have time limits in my program. If I see
awesome.
I take people for where they're willing to go. And the moment I constantly see that pushback, I present a challenge to them and I see how they handle it. And then I
Love it.
know whether or not they need to continue or not.
Well, listen, you're going to click on the link below to follow everything that Raina's doing, including checking out her new I Am Revolution class coming up. And right now, we're going to take a quick, brief break. All right, everybody, we are back. And here is one of the favorite segments that you tune in for, which is the most interesting thing about Raina's chart. And I have got to start. The beginning, middle, and end is all about what's going on your first house and your ascending here. Not just because it looks like a traffic jam, but because you were so close. You were minutes away from being a triple Capricorn. Are you familiar with that at all? Are you familiar with astrology at all? Do you ever work with it?
I've worked with it a couple times. I'm not too familiar, but I have heard that once. Yes.
Well, I mean, your rising is at the anaric 29%, or turning 29 degrees rather percent. We're talking about 99% earlier, but at the 29 anaric angle, you just see an optimistic point in everybody that you meet. You are always going to be optimistic with the people that you meet, even though your Cappy Cap sun and moon, by the way, you're born on a new moon here, just about a new moon, where you might be a little bit like emotionally like devoid. You might be a little bit like drawn back. So, but relationships really click for you when you look at the opposite house in the seventh. You're very passionate. You got Mars sitting out there and Lilith in Cancer. So you are all about helping people on their journey. That's how you build relationships.
Yes.
It's in
Absolutely.
your chart. But boy, oh boy, if you were a triple Capricorn, I don't know that you could have the philosophies that you have, because there's a little bit of that Eeyore thing when you have sun and moon in Capricorn, because it's just kind of like well, sure, it's fine, it's going okay now, but it's not going to be tomorrow. Or you see like one cloud on a sunny day and you're like, hey, it's a great day out today, and you're like, but do you see that cloud over there? Yeah, it's coming to get us. And you're like, whoa, hold on a second, it's going to be 85 and sunny all day. What are you talking about? That's one cloud. But do you find that and by the way, that's empowered because you have Mercury on your rising sign. So you're a great communicator. You've got the teacher mode within that. You also have Neptune sitting there, which is a high, that's where you get your intuition from. Is Neptune is sitting in your 12th house. That's your personal power generator for intuition. So sometimes it's worked well for you. Sometimes it's not worked well for you. But when it doesn't work well, it's a lesson. And when it works well for you, it's purpose. So that's just a quick couple of minutes on your chart. And boy, oh boy, of course, you've got the Venus Sun component, and you're natural caregiver. You naturally appreciate people where they're at, and they love you for it. They absolutely love you for it. My gosh. Do you feel like a goat? I asked that of everybody. I asked that of everybody Capricorn. Do you feel like a goat?
Yes, yes, I do, because I'm always trying to climb a new mountain. I'm always trying to achieve the top, and but it's like it's the journey that gets you there. And I love having friends and people along with me to share that. And life is beautiful. Why not enjoy it with everybody?
Well, and listen, you're a seasoned professional with that answer. I freaking love it. Like Raina, you are a powerhouse, aren't you? You're like, hey, and by the way, I secretly do stay up at night and try and think of like, hey, what's something crazy I can ask Raina? We'll get to the 5 good minutes in a second, but that conversation for me is really about, you really know yourself. That's the cool part about this. Early in life, you might have had crippling self-doubt with some of these placements, but then you started to lose the idea of the absolutes. I mean, you also have a 29 angle of Saturn in the 8th house. So you're going to sit in practicality from like, I'm not going to just take from you. We're going to have a give and take.
Yes,
That
absolutely.
is how you roll. And by the way, sign of a good teacher right there,
Yeah,
right? Especially in the spiritual community as a colleague in this work. Thank you, because you're absolutely upholding the values that we really need to kind of do it. And I can see it in your chart, and it's awesome.
Oh no,
Really awesome.
that's amazing, but no need to ever thank. We don't do it for thank yous, you know. But it is. It's like, people have to I was like when you sat there and said that, when I was young, be a little insecure and just trying to figure things out. I was actually very insecure as a child, and I was being pushed many different ways, and I never really understood who I was. It like how we kind of talked about how I kind of pushed back everything and just leveled everything. That's when all this started to build, because that's when I started recognizing who I was versus what people expected from me.
That's pretty awesome, actually. I mean, that's really important. And listen, that is the most interesting part of Raina's chart right here. We're going to actually take another quick commercial break, and we're going to get to the 5 good minutes where I give rapid fire questions to Raina about what just comes out of her right away. And if we're as conscious as we think we are, this is a really fun segment. Are you ready for this? Did you lose sleep over this next segment?
I kind of did. I was sitting there, I was like, oh, what if I can't answer the question?
Yeah, you'll stammer and stutter. I mean, listen, theater people with higher educations, MBAs in public communication, they all waffle at this part. Don't worry about it. We're going to hear from one of our really cool sponsors right now, and we'll be right back with 5 good minutes. Hey, everybody, I want to come to you and talk to you a little bit about how to upgrade. I want to tell you about my friends at the Acadian.me. You're going to go to them, you're going to check out their website, and you're going to find nothing but handmade leather goods. The kind that real men work with, the kind that real men pull out of their pockets and use on a daily basis. Come on, guys, you've graduated from the Velcro ripped open wallet. Nobody needs to see your favorite sports character or superhero. No, now it's time to actually man up a little bit. It's time to upgrade. Ladies, if you have a gentleman in your life that you need to upgrade, this is a perfect product line in order to work with it. I've had this wallet now for the better part of 4.5 years, and let me tell you, it is as secure as the first day that I opened it. It's got over 10,000 butt miles, and it's still working just as fine. I want to tell you a little bit about the diversity in which they have their products, and guess what? You might have to wait a little bit in order to get it. You might have to put in a special order. But know that each one of their products are made to last. Matter of fact, when I grew out my beard, one of the first things I got myself was this really cool handy dandy comb. By the way, isn't that a cool logo? And look at how close and uptight all of those stitches are. Handmade, it's overseen, each one of them. I use this comb every single day before I go in. It sits in this awesome leather pouch. It's time to upgrade right across the board, gentlemen. So if you're discerning like me, you don't want to buy a wallet every 2.5 years and have plastic leather and pictures of other people's kids in your wallet. Fill it with your hopes, your dreams. Make it built to last. You built something for real. Now you should have products surrounding you that are built for real. Check out my friends at the Acadian.me today. When you put in your order, tell them Brandon sent you. I don't get anything from it. I'm just helping a friend because he makes some of the best products in the world. And I want to support that. I want to support quality. And I want to make sure that you know that there's quality out there. I'm going to give them the hard taps over there at the Acadian.me. Tell them Brandon sent you. And remember, keep going. Okay. All right, kiddo, you ready?
Yes, I'm ready for this is speed round.
Are you sure?
Yes, yes, yes.
By the way, don't think that I'm like pushing you.
Oh no, not at all, not at all. I love this. Honestly, I do.
You like this setup?
Yeah, my dyslexia will say something. I'm pretty sure I'll say something dyslexic a couple times. You'll ask me a question,
I
I'll
will
probably
not. I will absolutely not change that. That I won't change. There's no editing that.
yeah,
Uh,
no.
okay. All right. I've got my list of. I've just got lists of questions, and I just kind of like intuitively work through it.
That's
Um,
perfect.
okay. All right, everybody. We are back, and right here we're gonna do 5 good minutes with Raina.
Awesome.
All
Can't
right,
wait.
All right, Raina, you ready? Now,
Yes,
here are the rules. And by the way, for a Pisces to have rules, I got to stick to them, right?
absolutely.
Everything's loosely based. It's just to kind of get your Capricorn dander up a little bit. So what we're going to actually do is I'm just going to give you one question right after another. As you finish it, I'm going to start in with the next question. I'm not pressuring you into this. I'm not trying to put you into into a breakdown mode. What I want is your authenticity. I want you to be able to kind of just speak from the consciousness of your soul, so then you can really kind of rock this. It's a sign of consciousness, and it's also the stream of consciousness. This is my way of sharing my gift with you, because this is how I think all the time, and it just gives the guest an opportunity to do this. Are you ready, Raina?
I am ready.
All right, here we go. Are you ready? 5
Yes.
minutes on the clock, please. And of course, I never really kind of follow along in that. All right. If you were to measure your life in lucky, where would you be on a scale of 1 to 10?
10.
What is your actual dream job? Trick question.
What I'm doing right now.
Everybody always says that, right? Now, what is your favorite childhood memory when it came to tradition for your root?
Just spending time with my family, having just the idea of understanding them and understanding how the dynamics in it. I love my family.
Favorite holiday growing up?
Ooh, Samhain.
What is it? Oh, really?
Samhain, yes. Yeah,
So
yeah.
you sell it. That's awesome. What would your favorite holiday be now?
To be honest with you, I don't enjoy any other. I don't celebrate any holidays other than Samhain.
Really?
Yeah.
Wow, that is really
Yeah.
like I listen, I do this for a living. I'm like, well, I see that coming. Listen, childhood nickname.
Oh, geez. I don't think I ever had one. I had one later, though. They called me Krusty because I was so clean.
They called you Krusty?
Yeah, it's kind of like, because
Like
I was
Krusty the Clown?
no, like because it was a joke because I was always so germophobic and clean on everything.
Oh, there you go. What's the best compliment a student has ever given you?
Ooh. Oh, wow. Probably that I changed their life.
What's the place in the world you need to see before you leave your body?
Egypt. I got to go back.
Oh, so how many trips have you had?
Oh, no, I've never had in this lifetime, but I've spent many lifetimes in Egypt.
What has been your greatest epiphany through this entire thing? Like, what is the thing that you didn't expect coming into it? And now you're like, wow, this is huge.
On my last ayahuasca trip, I realized that I'm a god and so are you.
Oh, well, ayahuasca will do that just a little bit, there. What is the best gift you've ever given?
My love.
Oh, look at you go. Like, guys, she's a trained professional. I can't get
No,
through.
I'm being honest. I don't believe in materialism. This
Yeah.
is junk to me. And like my friendship, like for my birthdays, holidays, I tell them I just want you to spend time with
Come
you.
here. And having just had my 50th, I will tell you, people carved out time for me, and it was awesome.
Yes.
It was that was the gift. That was the only thing I needed. All
Yeah.
right. Favorite movie, binge watch all time. What's the one you have to stop and watch?
Oh my God, there's so many of them. I love Adam Sandler stuff. I love the Resident Evil stuff. I love horror stuff. There's so many. I can't even just pick one.
Oh my gosh. Okay. All right.
Wars. I mean, just anything Marvel stuff like that. Oh, I love it.
So you like adventure stuff. You like it to kind of like unfold and just see what kind of whether it's campiness or whether it's kind of like real world ramifications. Like, don't give them the gauntlet. I get it.
I love the hero. I love the hero, like someone who's not supposed to make it through trials, tribulation, and comes out and does what they need to do. That's what I love.
That says a tremendous amount about you as a teacher. You do know that, right?
Oh,
All right. Favorite band all time, Desert Island. Get the entire catalog. You can listen to it from now until eternity. What's the one artist or band you got to take with you?
Pink Floyd.
You got to be kidding me.
Mm-hmm.
You're gonna love one of my future guests, by the way, connected to Pink Floyd. It's pretty awesome.
Oh, really?
Was it Dark Side of the Moon that actually got you into him?
All of them. When we were young, one of my friend's dad, that's all he played was Pink Floyd. And so he would just sit in his and blast it, and he would play all the albums, and it was just
you do realize that their best stuff came out before we were born.
Yes, absolutely.
like everything. I actually think that it came out the month I was born, at Dark Side of the Moon, which I'm doing my research on that for a reason. But what do you feel your legacy will be? Last question.
Honestly, I just hope that people who come around me learn to love more. That's it. I don't care about a personal legacy. If I'm never remembered, that's okay. As long as the stuff that I've taught them, they carry over to teach to other people. That's all I care about.
Ego in check.
Yeah.
Ego in check. Raina, you are a wonderful guest here. And listen, I want you back here on Stream of Consciousness because I know you're going to grow over time. I know some new stuff is going to come out here. I'm going to highly encourage everybody to follow along on all your social medias. It'll be down below. If you have a question for her, feel free to reach out to her. If you want to just let her know that you caught us on this show, that's fantastic too. Helps me, helps her. Also, remember to click like and subscribe. Consider becoming a subscriber and a member here. That helps out the channel. And of course, our sponsors as well. So who do you want to give your heart tap out to?
Just anybody and everybody, just share as much love as possible. Be kind to each other. Try to understand yourself. And just remember, everything that we hold on to doesn't matter. Just the memories of the people around us and our lives. That's it. So
we're going to give the heart tap out to everybody that needs a lift up higher and beyond. We love and care for one another. So what is that? What is that? What am I doing? I'm not opening a portal, am I?
No. So this right here, it's hard to see on the other end, but this was taught to me by my guides. This is the heart energy transformation. So before I do classes or I work with somebody, I bring this up to open the heart channel up, because this is where the universal understanding comes through. It's
a form of a mudra, wouldn't you think?
It's when you look, it's hard to show, but
yeah, no, I can see it. It's like a heart.
Your
heart's right in the center of it.
You have the three pyramids, or the three tetrahedrons, and that's so you're using the tetrahedron activation, and then the inside forms two hearts, and that opens up the heart channel.
You know what, everybody? This is how you get back on my show again. You'll leave everybody on a high note where you talk about tetrahedrons and Merkabas and Flower of Life. Damn, Raina. Think we did it. But we're still going to give the heart tap out to remind one another that we love and care for each other, and to simply keep going. Raina, you're a great guest. Thanks again. Come back soon.
Much. I appreciate being on your show.
All right. Fantastic. Where do I want to go with the special sauce? There's so much. That was so rich.
I know, right? I know, you're great. You're actually a great host. So there's so many of these that I do that the person just like has no understanding of what I'm saying, and then they're just looking at the next question, and you're doing
no. Well, I work with Stream of Consciousness. That's why it's called Stream of Consciousness. Yeah. Like, this is an exercise for me. Thanks for participating.
Oh, absolutely.
All right, so listen, let me ask you this question. Let me ask you, I know where I'm going to go with this.
Okay.
All right, members, thank you so much. I just had a great time with Raina. I know you guys went and hurried up and ran back here to make sure you get the special sauce, the extra little bit where we ask a really deep question about a spiritual gift or something in terms of development. And Raina, something that really stuck out for me was when you brought up Egypt. Can we talk about past lives for a second?
Sure. What do you want to know?
I want to know, what's your connection with Egypt? Because when you were talking about the tetrahedron and the three, of course, this is symbolic stuff with ancient Egypt in a big way, right? Because you got the three pyramids, you got the Great Pyramids, you got Orion. When you explored your past life stuff, what did you find?
Well, a lot. I mean, there's past lives to me only are there to bring in karmic lessons. But in ancient Egypt, I was King Tut.
Shut the front door.
I was.
Really?
Yep, my father was Akhenaten. I can, the list go like, and you know, I don't know what your listeners are evolved to, so I'm gonna
We're
kind
we're
of
pretty okay. Let her rip.
okay.
Let her
So
mostly geeks and angels.
okay,
You're
okay.
welcome, members.
Are they open to like that?
Let
We're
her
not
rip,
on
kid.
the
Listen,
planet.
this is let her rip.
So
Let her rip.
a lot of ancient Egypt and a lot of these other places were founded through the Sirius star system. So
Yeah.
a lot of Syrians came here. My baseline is from Sirius. And so Akhenaten is not from planet. Like actually, if you see the culture of the face, you can see. And so part of my lineage wasn't either. And so I was King Tut. And if you look at my house is all Egyptian stuff, like everything. It's all King Tut, all the like, everything all over. It looks like you went back in time. And so my job wasn't finished as a teacher, my consciousness, my karmic had to bond from the King Tut eras to this. And that's why I came back as a teacher to bring consciousness, because at that time that we were doing it, we were phasing out one side of consciousness and now we're bringing it back in. And that's why they're connecting right there.
Yeah, that's pretty awesome. I think, you know, I do a lot of work with past lives. I'm actually a PLR with Brian Weiss. I got that certification. Well, you know, when you start doing this work and you're trying to figure stuff out, you're like, oh, I want to deeper dive into that. And I got a PLR certification. I've probably done about 25, 30 past life regressions. I've never done any online. I think it's really tough. Like you need kind of like a headset container. Dark room doesn't require like I just think that the screen's going to screw it up, right? You almost have to do it all verbally.
Yes, absolutely.
But part of the reason why I had worked with that is my experience, and it's actually in my book. You're going to read it. Need your address. Is that I had a connection with the son that I adopted. Like I just knew it. I knew we were in wartime Germany. I know that I was not necessarily the good guy, and I know that I had a soft spot for him. So it was the way where I'm like, oh, I'm going to build this up differently. And I think that the past life part of this is just like off the charts. You know, for me, like when you do your spiritual journey stuff, the past life work, like you got to pull it out, at least for an understanding. Even if you don't do your own past life regressions, you know, or connect with somebody, the fact that you were so radiant with it, did you happen upon it, or was it something that you just always knew? And then
I always knew. I have dreams of it. I have
Sure.
vision of it. I carry everything around, even the Ankh with me. I even had one time, there was two psychics that I went to. I've been to many, and most people can't read me. It's like it draws a blank. And I was at a place one time, and this lady, I walked in a friend's house to go to a pool party, and she's like, and she started pointing at me, going, oh my, and she started drawing King Tut and all, and the sarcophagus and the pyramids, and she's like, and she's speaking in Spanish, and one of my friends is translating, and I went, shh, no one's supposed to know that, because the people that I was with weren't kind of ready for that yet. And I don't really tell too many people about
you
that.
got outed.
Yeah, I got outed by a lady that she recognized it right away. If she didn't speak English, she was speaking Spanish. She's just like, oh, and she's like, come.
Oh
And
my God, that is so hard then. Jeez Louise. Wow.
And only a few people, like recently I've been opening up more because I really don't like titles. And to me, it's great that that's who I was, but I don't care about the status of that. What I care about is like
You've been there, done that. You've been there,
Yes.
done that. Like
Exactly.
that's Raina, that's like, so one of the things that I talk about with consciousness is also our soul's maturity.
Yes.
Right. So, you know, and we kind of tapped on that a little bit earlier, but I found that like the part of it that I thought was very interesting that you said when you were talking about that, you know, sometimes we're fiscally, financially, you know, fiscally mature and so forth and so on. But the one thing that I thought was very kind of cool, um, you know, that I'd love to do a deeper dive sometime on is about soul maturity.
Yes.
You know, like how we learn it from this one and bring it forward to this one. And why do we have to relearn that stuff? Why do we have to be presented with other challenges to show that maturity? And I mean, more times than not, most people get it wrong the first time around. That's why we get another opportunity. That's the actual definition of karma, is the opportunity to learn those things, not retribution. But the fact that you really understood Egyptian lore and culture
Mhm.
is pretty impressive. Why do you think you knew it and you didn't have to kind of like learn it? You didn't have to happenstance it. And what is it going to take to get you to Egypt?
It's gonna take, if anyone wants to donate to my plane fund, that would be great. I would appreciate it. But,
Maybe that should be your focus next time around. I mean that seriously, wholeheartedly.
by the way,
No,
but
stop. Let me help you. No, let me help you. This is
per
the part where you have conditioned yourself to not work with the fact that, you know what, maybe I should do, even you and I are built from the same cloth, that like we don't just like you to hand us money. Like that's just not in there, right? That Mars placement is everything. That's not what our friendship is. So why not say, I'm going to do this retreat for a set dollar amount. Any other donations are going to go towards that. So you're actually earning and
we're
you're
actually
providing.
we're actually setting up for that stuff. But to be honest with you,
I read
with
people for a living.
yes, exactly. And but to be honest with you, I don't feel safe yet going to Egypt because there's sometimes some issues going on and things like that. And that's just the reality of life. And I just don't feel
Yeah.
safe going there. So until I feel like it's kind of safe there to go there and that, then I'll end up going back. But
Listen, I'm just going to say this to you in honesty. You're divine, hun. You're not going to have the problems, and you're going to get lucky. But
yeah,
maybe this is sizing you up for the timing of the visit. That'll listen to.
yeah,
You know,
absolutely. Absolutely. But the way I look at it is everyone's so interested in past lives and they're cool. Like I was in the Civil War, I died in that. It's just like, and I remember a lot. And we all have sometimes some terrible lives. Sometimes we're terrible people. And and we don't want to remember those, but they're
I mean,
all
did you run a death camp and save one kid only? I mean, we all got our stubs.
but we've all been murderers. We've all been murderees. We've all been rapists. We've all done these things. And we
Yeah.
like to think that we're all these kings and queens all the time. And fortunately for me, I was one, but I died at a very young age. But they're there to teach us to understand, like karma is like, hey, I learned this lesson, but I'm not mature enough yet to get this. So I'm going to have all these lives with different perspectives. And then I'm going to pull this to understand the full perspective.
I
And
love that.
and that's what it's about. That's why I remember so much right now.
Raina, listen, I love that you had the time for me today. I super appreciate you. You
Yeah.
really are. My heart tap's going out to you on your journey. And I know you have to hit this soul point of going to Egypt. Like I had to go to Sedona. I'm going to Shasta. I'm going to be doing other trips. And I'm finding my life's purpose through this work.
Yeah.
Right. Like, as in like, oh, I'm getting that. And I can see it in you. I'm in awe. And
No,
listen, your topic is so esoteric. You can't just say, here's the thing. And the fact that you're conceptualizing it, don't ever sell yourself short on how important that is, because you're awesome.
thank you, Brandon. I appreciate it. And thank you so much for allowing me on the show. It was such a true honor for me to be able to express ourselves and to have this interjection. So thank you.
Love it. Come back again. Okay.
Thank you so much.
All right.